Evening to you all.
And we'll begin momentarily.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll be starting the webinar. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining today's masterclass titled Framework for Sharpening Your Purpose Agenda. My name is Harshad Kartikar. I work with the executive education team at ISB. And through this masterclass today, we will explore the profound impact of purpose in business, and we'll discover practical strategies to align your organization's purpose with its values, goals, and aspirations. The significance of purpose in business today cannot be overstated. In fact, it is said that the two most important days in a company's life, in an enterprise's life, are the day that it starts existing and the day that it finds out why, or discovers its sense of purpose or existence. In recent times, the purpose-driven companies that we see have outperformed their peers in terms of financial performance, employee satisfaction, as well as customer stickiness and loyalty. You could just look at Patagonia as an example of a company that has a clear sense of purpose of using its business to protect the planet. So Patagonia's commitment to environmental stewardship and sustainability have not only made it profitable in terms of it being an enterprise, but it has also created a brand that resonates deeply with its customers. Similarly, if we look at Microsoft's purpose of empowering every person and organization on this planet to achieve more has helped it evolve from a mere software company to a technology giant that is leading the charge in the digital age of disruption today. And the success of these purpose-driven companies serves as a testament to the power of aligning purpose with business strategy. So in today's masterclass, Professor Nidumolu will provide valuable insights on how to connect your organization's financial objectives with its core values. With his wealth of experience, Professor Nidumolu will guide you through a framework for sharpening the purpose agenda for your organization. And the masterclass will also revolve around helping you discover practical strategies to align your organization's purpose with its goals and aspirations. The masterclass is also an opportunity to get a sneak preview of ISB Executive Education's CEO Dialogues, Leading with Purpose program. The program is a flagship program from Executive Education and is designed for CEOs. This program will enable the participating CEOs to help them craft and implement a shared purpose and embed purpose at the heart of their at the very heart of their business models. With that, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce Professor Nidumolu for today's webinar. Professor Nidumolu enjoys the unique distinction of being a B-School professor, Fortune 500 strategy consultant, a C-level executive, and an entrepreneur in the vibrant tech ecosystems in Silicon Valley and Bangalore. So without further ado, I would welcome Professor Nidumolu and hand over this virtual stage to him. Professor Nidumolu, you can proceed with the masterclass.
Thank you, Harshad, and I hope all of you can hear me clearly. And welcome to this masterclass. It's only about half an hour in duration, so I'm going to tone down some of the expectations set by Harshad. I won't be able to answer all the questions or the points that he raised. That is actually the purpose of the workshop itself. The workshop from May 18th till the 20th. In this half an hour, I'm just going to do three things. I'll be talking about the connection between purpose, corporate purpose, and business performance. I'll also be talking about the frameworks that you could use. I won't have time to go in depth into these frameworks. I'll just give you sort of a preview of them. And then finally, I'll give you an overview of the program itself, the CEO Dialogues program. So keeping that in mind, let me just quickly introduce myself. My own background, it's been about 40 years since I finished my MBA at IIM Calcutta, or PGDM as it's called. And in these 40 years, roughly 20 years have gone into an academic way of living. I did my PhD at UCLA, then was a professor at the University of Arizona and Santa Clara University in Silicon Valley. And then I left academia about 20 years ago, maybe about 25 years ago, I think. And then became an entrepreneur, as Harshad pointed out. and also worked with a large number of Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies at the C level. I was invited, for example, by the board of Harley-Davidson to create a sustainable business strategy for them, worked with Alcoa, FedEx, and so on. And I was also privileged to get to know the late Professor C.K. Prahlad, did some work with him that was published in the Harvard Business Review. And then I also wrote a book on leadership that combines ancient Indian wisdom with psychology and the latest in management thinking. I returned to India in 2015 and then set up a company in digital transformation, worked with the C-levels, the CEOs of Nestle, PepsiCo, Diageo, then called United Spirits, Medtronic, and a bunch of other companies, also Britannia. And I joined ISB in 2019, January 2019. I teach many of the leadership courses here in the PGP, PGP Max, PGP Pro, and the executive education programs. So in these 40 years, I've myself personally experienced the great importance of purpose and a sense of identity. And I'm going to, without much ado, here are the three things, as I mentioned. I'll connect purpose to business performance. I'll talk about a couple of frameworks for implementing purpose. Of course, the workshop itself, the two-day workshop, will go into depth in each of these topics. Here, I'll just give you a flavor of them. And I'll give you an overview of the CEO Dialogues Leading with Purpose program. Three simple objectives. Hopefully, I'll finish this in the next 25 minutes or so. And again, welcome. I see a large number of you. And this is a good time to be talking about purpose because it is connected to business performance. And before I talk about that, here's a simple couple of definitions of purpose. The first one is a goal-oriented definition. It's a goal or an objective for a firm that goes beyond profit maximization. But notice, it doesn't talk about the very existence, the reason for being. And that's the second definition. And this is a more recent definition. Purpose is much deeper than just a goal or an objective. A goal could be, for example, become a billion-dollar company by 2030. But that doesn't talk about the essence of the organization. And that's the second definition. This is all about why do we exist? What value do we bring to which stakeholders? So in a sense, this is a more realistic sense of purpose, the kind of purpose that provides meaning and identity to members of the employees of the organization. So I'll go with the second definition. And in more detail, a goal-based purpose could also talk about, for example, customers. It can go beyond profits and performance and so on, and talk in terms of the value that you bring to customers, the kinds of products and services that you'd like to develop, the kinds of regions that you'd like to address, the core technologies and so on, right? And also the kind of identity you want to have as a firm. But it may not include this issue of a company being a moral actor, being someone that's doing something for society. And that's the second kind of purpose, which is a duty-based purpose. Here you're looking at the company as having some ethical and moral responsibilities. And these could be in terms of values, some core beliefs that you may have. For example, Google started out with the purpose that we will do no evil. And that's a value. It's a value statement. And so through that, you hope to bring about a change in society. You may have some goals related to social service, that you will serve the underprivileged. Or you may have a purpose which is about the environment, that you will have a low footprint, or you will be a net positive when it comes to the environment. So those are about duties. Now, you could have a combination of goals and duties, but it's important to distinguish between these two kinds of purpose. If I can request people to turn off their microphones, otherwise we get an echo over here. Thank you. And the reason why purpose and performance are important is because there are these connecting links. Purpose, for example, can lead to a sense of shared beliefs and vision. So if you have a sense of whether it's duty or goal-based, and if that's shared across the company, that is a shared vision. While purpose is all about why you exist, vision is about the end state. When you've made progress in achieving your purpose, how would you look like? And that shared vision, those set of shared beliefs, are also important drivers of performance. Purpose is also a big contributor to meaning, the way employees look at their work and the meaning they derive from their work. And purpose is also a big driver of identity. where the employees, managers, executives feel a sense of belonging to the organization. These three, in turn, lead to greater alignment. Alignment between, for example, the individual purpose and the organizational purpose. It could lead to greater intrinsic motivation. Employees and your partners may want to do something for its own sake as opposed to the external rewards. That's a value of purpose. Purpose, especially when deeply embedded and aligned with your values, enables that kind of motivation that is called intrinsic motivation. And all these together lead to greater trust. And as we all know, trust is a very critical, you could call it the currency of the organization. And so these 6 intermediate factors lead to greater performance. So this is one way of looking at purpose. Purpose drives performance because of these mediating or intermediate concepts, especially trust, motivation, and alignment. And over and again, you'll see this, that purpose is a very important driver of meaning. I do research in this area, and the kind of data I get shows that meaning and finding meaning at work, creating a meaningful workplace, is a very critical driver of all these 3 things we're looking at, and ultimately a performance. And as to the numbers themselves, there's been work done by a consulting organization called Kantar Consulting that says that companies that have a sense of purpose, a corporate purpose, over the longer term, over 12 years, create greater brand value than those who have a low sense of purpose. A 175% versus 70%. That's 2.5 times greater brand value as compared to the ones with low purpose. But the challenge in research like this is it's not clear if they've done a thorough analysis, controlled for other factors. And that's the research I want to bring to your attention. It's an excellent piece of research that appeared in the Organization Science Journal, which is a top journal in management. And let me spend a few minutes describing this research. This looked at this connection between purpose and financial performance, and why particularly, and what are the factors that really drive performance. Because some research studies suggest that there may not be a connection between purpose and performance if you just take those 2 constructs, those 2 concepts. So you have to look more deeply into it and tease out hidden relationships. And that's what this research does. It looked at, for example, the 100 best companies to work for that Fortune creates. It looked at it over a 5-year period. There are about 429 firms, and each firm has to report 2 different surveys, the results of 2 different surveys, a cultural audit survey and a trust index. And this research looked at the data points. The companies have to report the results from surveys of employees. And this is a very large sample. They looked at the data from about 456,666 employees of the firm. That's a very large sample. And here's how they measured corporate purpose. They measured it mainly in terms of meaning. And again, I want to emphasize meaning often is connected to corporate purpose. And here are the kinds of questions they asked. And employees had to respond to these questions. My work has special meaning. It is not just a job. When I look at what we accomplish, I feel a sense of pride. So the fact that work goes beyond just a job, there's a sense of pride. I feel good about it. I feel proud about it. And I'm proud to tell others I work here, suggests that there's a sense of purpose, whether explicit or implicit. And here's the interesting thing about this research. They went beyond just those measures of purpose and looked at 2 other factors. Does purpose, in combination with the kind of camaraderie, the kind of, this kind of a family atmosphere, the sense of fun and collegiality, does that drive performance, or is it something else? And that's called purpose clarity. The second one is purpose clarity. Can purpose, along with leadership, bringing real clarity to employees on the direction of the company, the responsibilities of individuals, the tools that they could use to achieve that purpose, that kind of clarity, which goes beyond a fun and collegial kind of workplace, does that make a difference? So when you look at these 2 and consider them as separate, it turns out, yes, purpose clarity, where purpose goes hand in hand with that kind of clarity provided by leadership, does indeed vary. And the return on assets, which is on the y-axis, increases as the purpose clarity increases significantly, as you can see. Whereas purpose camaraderie, it's all fun and good to have a nice, wonderful workplace where you feel a sense of belonging and family, but that by itself is not sufficient. So purpose camaraderie is not really related to return on assets, but purpose clarity is. That's a very interesting conclusion, that you need to combine purpose with this kind of direction and clarity. The second thing that they looked at, and this is a more involved table, I'm not going to go into the details of it, is where does purpose, a sense of purpose, really matter? Is it at the hourly employees? Is it at the middle managers? Is it the professionals in the organization? Is it the executives? So looking by job role, which job role does purpose really matter? And it turns out that it's really most critical at the middle manager level. If middle managers have a sense of purpose, then return on assets and another measure called Tobin's skew, it's a measure that takes into account not just return on assets, but also in terms of the kind of market value, the increase in market value that has taken place, market value of the equity or the shares. So it takes into account the growth in market value also. And when you look at that, middle managers instilling a sense of purpose in them has a big effect on return on assets and the Tobin skew. So that's where the real challenge is, going beyond employees, professionals, executives, to the middle managers. And so again, I'm not going to go into there are other fascinating insights from that research, which I don't have the time for, but those are the two most important takeaways. Purpose clarity and a sense of purpose among middle management is the big driver of financial performance. With that, let me move on to the second part of this presentation, and that is the frameworks for implementing corporate purpose. So while the first one is about why does purpose matter? Because it improves business performance. The second is about how. How do you implement a sense of purpose, corporate purpose in the organization? I won't go into the details, but let me identify two frameworks. The first was from a Sloan Management Review work, published in the Sloan Management Review, the MIT Sloan Management Review. And there, three very important phases are critical for enabling purpose that leads to business performance. First is purpose knowledge, ensuring that purpose and how it applies to you, why it is relevant, is shared across the different employees of the organization, that there's a shared understanding of purpose and why it matters. That's purpose knowledge. And again, this research talks about how to do so, which we'll be discussing in the more detailed workshop in May 18th to 20th. The second very important one is it's not enough to have the shared knowledge. You also have to have people internalizing it, middle management and others internalizing it. In other words, purpose needs to be linked with their core values, their own sense of personal purpose. And that's the second and perhaps the most critical phase. It needs to become part of the DNA of the company because of this internalization. And the third and very important part that is often neglected is purpose needs to be measured. You need to find a way to understand how purpose is contributing to the business. And there are several metrics on how you can measure purpose and its contribution. Clearly, it has to be across the different stakeholders of the firm. But when you go through these three phases, creating shared knowledge, internalizing it, and finding ways to measure the contribution, then there are three key things that can happen in the organization. There's a sense of identity or belonging. There is meaning. Your work becomes meaningful because there's a sense of purpose. And there's clarity around your mission, what you're going to do. Mission is all about how and the guiding principles. So when you have this kind of clarity, then business performance improves. So that's one framework. Let me point out another framework. And this is based on some excellent work done in the literature, published in the Journal of Management. This talks about how you can go about through these different phases, identifying the internal drivers of purpose. What are sometimes the founding conditions, like the Tata Group of companies, the way they were founded, the early years of the company has really shaped the organization. Harshit talked about Patagonia. Why and how Patagonia was formed has had a big impact on the kind of purpose that Patagonia has pursued. So those kinds of founding conditions and the expectations of stakeholders, those really matter. External drivers matter, and there are many of them. And then the three key phases of implementing purpose is finding a way to framing it in a way that makes sense in terms of the mission, the vision, the values, and the stories that you tell. The narratives are very critical. The stories that you tell about the company, what the company is seeking to achieve, which stakeholders matter and why, and so on. The kind of, really the narrative is a critical part, but that's not enough. You also have to formalize it. You have to create the right structures, the measurement systems. You have to do the kind of internalization of embedding and the governance structures for it. Again, there's a lot of material on how to do so, which I'll not go into in this short presentation. But this is not enough. You have to realize value. You have to understand where purpose creates value, how you can appropriate that value. You may be able to create it, but your customers, your partners, your distributors might claim that value. So how could you as an organization take that value and appropriate it? And also understand the impact on stakeholders. And all through this, you have to recognize that the institutional context, the larger, the macro system itself, that has a big impact. So which are the aspects of that environment that really matter? Regulations, the kind of transparency requirements. And so how does purpose get affected by the macro environment around you, the expectations of society, communities, the government, and NGOs, and so on. So these are the different things to think about. And this is the process by which purpose becomes embedded in the organization. And there are some additional readings I would suggest. There's some wonderful work. There's a good case study on the Tata Group after Mr. Chandrasekaran took over. This case study talks about how the Tata Group evolved under his stewardship when he became the chairman of Tata Sons. It also gives a nice history of the Tata Group. And then a bunch of readings on making purpose real. A Harvard Business Review collection on what is purpose. Some excellent work by Ranjay Gulati, who's one of the faculty in this workshop. He wrote a book called Deep Purpose, from which this article is taken. Lena Nair, who was the chief HRO, the head of human relations she was at Unilever and then became the CEO of Chanel. So her work in terms of how you can use purpose to transform your workplace. And finally, how can you implement purpose in an agile way? Some good readings. And finally, some excellent work by Paul Polman, the former CEO of Unilever, along with Andrew Winston, on how you can get started on purpose, discovering purpose at both the organizational level and the employee level. So I highly recommend these readings. There are several other dozens of readings that we've also put together that we'll be discussing in the workshop. Other in-depth work on purpose and how to implement purpose. And before that, it's now 7:23. Let me just stop for a couple of questions, and then I'm going to do an overview of the program. Let me just look at the chat and see if there are any quick questions. A couple of questions on these frameworks and the relationship with performance. Please go ahead and type in your questions, just to make sure that everyone's following along. Please go ahead, use the chat function.
Hi, everyone. Please feel free to log in your questions on the chat, the webinar chat.
Yeah.
And the professor will be more than happy to answer them.
And again, I may not be able to answer many because I'll also move on to the program. But before I get to the program, I just want to answer any quick questions you may have.
Professor, we have a question from Krishna Joshi.
Okay, go ahead, Darshan.
Krishna says, could we use business model canvas by Alex Osterwalder also as a framework to formulate the purpose of an organization?
Well, so I want to mention, that business model canvas developed originally, by the way, through his PhD dissertation at Stanford, was developed much before purpose became a big thing, right? So yes, it can, but you need this kind of more in-depth exploration of purpose and implementing purpose, and then the business model is the means to implement it. So it's not enough by itself. You have to complement it with a more in-depth understanding of purpose itself, implementing the purpose. The business model canvas is about customer value proposition and so on, but purpose is another piece of it that BMC doesn't talk about in depth. So you need other frameworks to complement the BMC framework, right? Krishna, does that answer your question? And I see that. Okay.
Yes.
And Amulya, you asked a question, how to keep purpose intact in the event of, and so that's a more detailed question. So yes, that's a big challenge, of course. You have to really, and this is where meaning and culture comes in. The two different organizations may have a different set of purposes, meaning, identities. So all those, so this becomes an issue of change management. And there are change management frameworks. Of course, one popular one is the Kotter approach, but there are several other change management frameworks that can bring about this kind of compatibility, keeping purpose intact in the case of an M&A. So you have to complement purpose frameworks with change management frameworks, because those kinds of M&As are really where change management is the most challenging. And then there's an anonymous attendee talking about role of purpose in a diversified business. So yes, and you can think of the Tatas. They're all the way from salt to steel, right? Very diversified businesses. That the many dozens of them. But yes, there is a sense of shared purpose. So the way to think about purpose, whether it's the Tatas, the Aditya Birla Group, whether it's several of these large industrial houses, you need to try and identify a shared purpose. You could have a purpose at the group level, and then you have a purpose at the individual company level, and those two need to be compatible. So yes, that's a bigger challenge, of course, but the Tatas have done it. And in fact, that's a good question to ask of Mr. Natarajan Mr. Chandrasekaran when he's here, Natarajan Chandrasekaran, on how do you align the group purpose with the individual corporate purpose. I'm going to take one last question from Abhishek. Is there a clear distinction between goal-based and duty-based? Do you have some? Yes, I mean, there is a distinction, but as I mentioned, you can combine them. Initially, purpose was mainly just goal-based. It was not duty-based. Duty-based has become more important in the last 10 years. So you could have a combination of goal and duty-based, but it's good to know that these are two separate things. Duty-based means that there are external stakeholders like society and the environment that matter. Goal-based means that it's not those that matter, but it's more these direct stakeholders like customers and investors and bondholders and so on. So yes, you'll need to combine them, but it's good to keep the distinction in mind. Right? With that, let me move on to, I have about 10 minutes. Let me move on to the next part, which is the program itself. So this is the CEO Dialogues Leading with Purpose program. This is scheduled for May 18th to 20th, 2 weeks from now, and it will be located in Hyderabad. It will be an in-person for the participants. These are the objectives for the participants. One, understand deeply, at a deep level, why purpose is important for business performance. So we'll be talking in much more detail about the kinds of business performance that's affected. I'll go into more detail about what research has identified in terms of performance, the connection with performance. We'll also, very importantly, perhaps the most important, learn about industry best practices. From the key speakers we have, Ranjay Gulati, a professor at Harvard Business School, who's done a great deal of work on purpose and how to implement it. And of course, Mr. Chandrasekaran himself, the chairman of Tata Sons, he'll be there, and Alan Job, who's the global CEO of Unilever. And Unilever, as you know, is a pioneer, an industry leader, a worldwide leader in identifying and implementing a sense of purpose. So we'll hear directly from the CEO of Unilever, Mr. Alan Job, and of course from Mr. Natarajan Chandrasekaran. And we'll also have Harish Manwani, who was the former chief operating officer of Unilever, and he's now a senior operating partner at Blackstone, has done a lot of work with many companies on purpose. He'll be involved to a considerable extent, to a great extent in this workshop. So we'll learn about these industry best practices from these leaders in the field. And of course, you'll have an opportunity to interact with your peers, other CEO peers, and learn from them. And I'll also be talking about some research, academic research, which will give you that kind of foundation, the evidence-based foundation for understanding purpose, how to implement purpose, the connection of performance, and so on. And what we really expect is participants come to the workshop with an agenda for their organization. And there will be many working sessions. In fact, that's a key element of this workshop, that there'll be working sessions, which Mr. Harish Manwani would be leading. And through these working sessions, you'll be sharpening your agenda for purpose. So you'll be able to go away with a much sharper set of plans and frameworks, and how you're going to go about implementing purpose through the working sessions. Who should attend? CEOs of mid-sized companies, heads of business units with P&L responsibilities, founders and CEOs of companies that have become unicorns or large organizations, who will be able to take this and implement purpose in their organization and take it up seriously. And this question of why ISB? Clearly, purpose is of interest to many organizations. Why the Indian School of Business? We, of course, offer many programs. And in the recent rankings, we are considered #1 in India in terms of our MBA, the global MBA. Financial Times is a very recognized organization that evaluates the different MBA programs. We were ranked #1 by them, and also ranked in the executive education. This is an executive education offering, also ranked #1 in India. In the Asia Pacific region, Bloomberg Business Week ranked us #4. And in the same region, Asia, Financial Times ranked us #6. We're also globally ranked in #38 and #39 globally throughout the world by the Financial Times in terms of our programs, executive programs, and our MBA. So in India, we're ranked #1 to just emphasize that. And again, I want to really emphasize the faculty we have put together is absolutely world-class. Mr. Natarajan Chandrasekaran, who's the chairman of Tata Sons, previously the CEO of TCS, and in charge of this very large, iconic set of Tata companies, this large industrial house that is known for several decades now, for over a century, for their sense of purpose. He'll be there. We'll have Alan Jobe, the global CEO of Unilever. And Unilever often figures in the top 3 companies in the world in terms of purpose. He will be there and talking about how purpose gets implemented in a large organization like Unilever. Harish Manwani, as I pointed out, a senior operating partner, and previously a COO, the COO, Chief Operating Officer of Unilever. He'll be there. He's the senior operating partner at Blackstone. He'll be really running the working sessions and has invested very significantly in purpose-driven companies. Ranjay Gulati, professor at the Harvard Business School and one of the leading authorities on corporate purpose. He'll be there on the very first day. And my own background is in purpose, strategy, meaning, and leadership. So we'll be the faculty in this program. And then we are planning to do a kickoff on Thursday, May 18th, with the dean will inaugurate, deputy dean will get that going, and then we'll have Ranjay Gulati talking about why is leading with purpose critical, vital to business and society. That will be the very first day evening, May 18th from 6 to 7:30. This is the plan currently. And then on 19th, that is a Friday, we'll have, after I give an overview of the program, such as what I'm giving now, Mr. Chandrasekaran, the chairman of Tata Sons, will talk about the Tata journey of leading with purpose and address these questions. Why is it essential? How does the Tata Group implement it? How do you incorporate it into the individual businesses and their business models? And what is the future role of purpose? And then have a discussion with the participants. The afternoon working sessions will be led by Mr. Harish Manwani. And then we're also planning a trip to Falaknuma Palace, a leading location here in Hyderabad, and have drinks and dinner there. And then finally, day 2, which is a Saturday, May 20th, Mr. Alan Jobe, the global CEO of Unilever, will lead that session, 9:30 to 11. And that will be about the Unilever approach. What were the challenges in embedding purpose in the DNA of Unilever's business? How did you create a shared purpose across the many different stakeholders of Unilever? How do you identify business opportunities through the sense of purpose plus profits? And how do you make it central to the culture and the employee values? In other words, how do you embed it deep within the company, within the core values of the employees themselves? And what is the future of purpose? And again, there will be afternoon working sessions, which are meant to sharpen your purpose agenda and discuss with peers and so on. These working sessions give you a tangible output where you apply the lessons learned from Mr. Chandrasekaran, Mr. Alan Jobe, and Harish Manwani into a program of action for your organization. And then we'll have a concluding session. So that's the plan. Hopefully through this, there'll be an in-depth exploration of purpose and how to make it happen, how to develop it, and how to implement it, and how to realize it in the organization. With that, let me take a few more questions. It's now 7:35. Harshad, I'm assuming I have another 5 minutes. Does that work for you?
Yes, definitely, Professor. Okay. In fact, we've got some interesting questions already to be shared, to be answered.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go through that. If you see me looking with my head up, that's because I'm looking at the screen in front of me. And let me just say, Abhishek is telling me, if you've seen that, Vidya, you asked performance with purpose. Absolutely. And that is the whole goal. In fact, we will be talking quite a bit in the workshop about performance and purpose. As you know, Pepsi is the one that under Indra Nui really started talking about performance with purpose. Unilever has also been a pioneer in that. It's not just purpose for its own sake, but it's also to enhance business performance. So we'll be talking about how that can be done. And Krishna, I just see one comment from you. And by the way, please use your microphone. Why do you say it's awesome? That's an interesting word to use here. Go ahead, Krishna. Why the word awesome? Please go ahead and unmute yourself if you can. Harshad, if you could unmute. I'm just curious as to why Krishna said awesome.
Sure, Professor. I'm doing it.
Go ahead, Krishna. Yeah.
Krishna, you can use your microphone to address us all.
Yes, go ahead.
You're on mute, Krishna. You can unmute yourself.
Oh, okay. So now I see the ability. So
there you go. Okay, Krishna. Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Ram sir. I think this was very, very, I think eye-opening. I said awesome because I couldn't believe when I saw that Mr. Natarajan Chandrasekharan himself will be one of the faculty members, and we'll get the opportunity to interact with them directly. And I think the chairperson of Unilever. I think the set of people who are going to coach us, who we'll get to hear from. I think that collection, along with yourself, seemed fantastic to me. I think there can't be a much more enlightening experience other than hearing from you and the others who've actually been there, done that, and this is like real world experiences. So this seems like a fantastic and a very, very well thought through program.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you're right. I mean, you can't get a better set of faculty speakers in the world, I think, not just in India, worldwide, to have Unilever and the Tata Group and a professor who's done deep study of this at the Harvard Business School, and Mr. Harish Manwani with the wealth of experience he's got. It's a fantastic lineup. But I again want to emphasize that we'll also be selective in terms of who will be in the group and so on, right? As Harshad mentioned, this is, yes, we do expect that the people out there are, they meet certain criteria. But thank you for that compliment, Krishna.
Sure.
And I think it's an awesome set of speakers, I would say.
Right. Absolutely.
Go ahead. I'm just going to see if there are other questions. And if I can just request on the chat, and please use the chat or the Q&A. And Vidya, excited. Go ahead, Arshad.
Yes, Prof, we have a very interesting question from Suresh Cherukuri.
Okay.
Suresh asks, how do we handle if our purpose is evolving and taking a new shape with time?
Absolutely. And Suresh, that's a very good question. I'm not going to be able to give you a deep answer, but I want to emphasize these frameworks we are talking about are not rigid. They're not static frameworks. So there is a constant iteration on this. And that's a key part of purpose, to recognize that it does evolve, right? Hopefully, it doesn't change as rapidly as, let's say, strategies. In a way, purpose drives strategy. Strategies might be changing every year. Hopefully, purpose doesn't change every year, because we're talking of deep purpose. But yes, these frameworks do talk about that. That's again, and so I was talking about that particular thing about agile. If you remember, I was talking about an approach called an agile approach to purpose. That's exactly. So at some level, you have to follow an agile methodology at the organizational level. While agile is followed at the project level, for example, developing software and services, and a version of that agile approach can be used at the organizational level. And that would be to ensure that purpose evolves. So yes, we'll be talking about agility as part of purpose, right? How that is done, I won't be able to answer here. Other questions? Go ahead, Harshad, any other questions that you'd like to point out?
Yes, Prof. There's another interesting question by Abhishek.
Okay.
Abhishek Desai. Abhishek says, is there a clear distinction between
So,
goal-based?
Harshad, I answered that question earlier. Yeah. And I
Right.
made the point that, yes, they are different, but they can be combined. So purpose could include both of them. In other words, you could say, yes, we will provide, for example, great value proposition to our customers. So, we'll make a difference in customers' lives and also solve the issues related to the environment and also have a low impact on the environment. Not only will we make a difference to customers, which is a goal-oriented one, but we will also have a positive impact on society and the environment. That's a dual purpose. And there's been quite a lot of work on dual purpose now that combines both goal and duty oriented. Many companies are evolving in that direction, not just pick one of them, but to combine them. Any other questions there? Okay, I don't see any other questions with that. Let me turn it over to you, Harshad, and thank you all for listening patiently for the last 35 minutes. I hope you've got something out of this brief and at some level, high-level presentation. But let me turn it over to Harshad. Harshad, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Prof. Like Prof mentioned, I would like to point or bring to everyone's attention the exclusive flagship program that we've at ISB Executive Education are working towards developing, which is the CEO Dialogues Leading with Purpose program. The program will present an opportunity for the participants to meet and learn from business leaders who hail from globally iconic companies and the companies who've internalized purpose at the very heart of their businesses. So this is a great opportunity where people would get a FaceTime, get unfettered access in a workshop environment with business leaders like Alan Yop, who's the global CEO for Unilever, N. Chandrasekharan, who's the chairperson for Tata Sons, and of course, Professor Ram, who would be the academic director for this particular program.
Don't forget Mr. Harish Manwani and
yes,
Ranjit Gulati.
I was actually coming to the globally acclaimed academics, but yes, it's a mix of industry practitioners with globally acclaimed academics on purpose, like Mr. Harish Manwani. We've got Professor Ram himself, and we also have the industry practitioners, Alan Yop and N. Chandrasekharan. So I've been dropping the link to the program in the chat in case people would want to know more about the program. And I've also dropped my colleague Advait's details. He's the program advisor, and he'll be able to help you with any questions that you might have with respect to the admissions, enrollments, or the selection for the program. I'd also like to hand over the stage, the virtual stage, to Advait, who is my colleague and the program advisor for CEO Dialogues. He can give you a brief overview of the program as such. Advait, over to you.
Yes. So good evening, everybody. For the program CEO Dialogues Leading with Purpose, we have also ensured that all of the participants are going to be carefully selected from an application pool by a senior panel of experts from the academia as well as the industry, based on your profile fitment, and then we'll be inviting you for the program. The program is best suited for CEOs in India and abroad interested in enabling a purpose-driven company, national and business heads who direct P&L for their organizations, founders and CEOs of unicorns. The program, like Harshad has also emphasized, is scheduled for 18th, 19th and 20th of May at ISB Hyderabad. The fee for the program is rupees 2,50,000. My contact details have been dropped in the chat, and I'll also be resharing them again. You can get in touch with me over my number. I'll also drop my mail ID for any questions that you have regarding the admissions process as well as the admission criteria to the program. The program is an exclusive invite-only program. So once you apply, we'll be getting in touch with you regarding the status of your candidature. And we also urge you to apply for the program at the earliest, since the application deadline is set for May 12th. So, any kind of questions that you might have or any kind of queries that you might have with respect to the admissions process, with respect to the criteria, or in general with regards to the program, kindly do get in touch with me and we'll do our best in order to make sure that everything is cleared out. Again, I'd like to reaffirm The program's application deadline is scheduled for May 12th, 2023. And apart from this, any other questions that you might have or any other questions regarding the admissions process, please feel free to type it out in the chat right now, and we'll do our best to clear it. In case you wish to get in touch, my contact number and mail ID are already mentioned in the chat. That's
I just want to emphasize, in fact, I would even recommend sending in the application by the end of this weekend, by Sunday itself. Right?
Right.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thanks, Advait. Thank you so much, Prof. And thanks everyone, each of the participants who I hope got a sneak preview into the program CEO Dialogues Leading with Purpose and the insightful session by Professor Nidumolu on sharpening your purpose agenda. Thanks everyone. Thanks for your time. And we look forward to receiving your applications for the program as well.
And thank you all for making the time out on a Friday evening to attend this masterclass. I hope you benefited from it and look forward to interacting with you. Thank you all very much again. Thank you.
Thank you all. You have a good weekend, everyone.